We start this hour in the United States. It is, of course, Super Tuesday, the biggest day so far in the 2024 race for the White House. Millions of voters are heading to the polls in 15 states and one territory to choose their preferred candidates for president. The first voting will get underway in Virginia in just a few hours' time. It promises to be a big day for polling, but President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are almost certain to face each other again in November's election. Some states had tried to exclude Mr. Trump from the ballot, but on Monday, the Supreme Court overruled that. Our North America correspondent Emma Vardy reports from a hockey game in Colorado.
America's getting ready for a big political contest. But despite the millions of votes being cast, it's already pretty clear which candidates will be facing off in the presidential battle. As Colorado goes to the polls, sisters Mandy and Nikki are headed to the ice.
We are such a divided nation, but the one thing I like is when I walk into the hockey rink, we're all the same.
The feeling's rather different on the campaign trail as 15 states are holding votes to pick their presidential candidates.
Crooked Joe Biden, you're fired!
Before polls have even closed, there's been a victory for Donald Trump. The state of Colorado was in a fight to kick him off the ballot entirely for his role in the Capitol riots on January the 6th. But the US Supreme Court struck it down. His Republican opponent is undeterred.
I defeated a dozen of the fellas. I just have one more fella I gotta catch up to.
The question is whether Nikki Haley quits the race or decides to hang on. It wasn't President Joe Biden, but the First Lady doing the rounds on the Democratic side, going after female voters.
Donald Trump is dangerous to women and to our families. We simply cannot let him win.
But the prospect of a Joe Biden rematch with Donald Trump is unpopular with many voters.
I do wish there were more choices. That's another thing I don't love about our political system here.
Contenders that have been there before and they're kind of ready to go again.
So not the most exciting match?
Not this time, no.
Because neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump has any serious competition this year as political games go, the result is rather a foregone conclusion. What matters now is that after Tuesday, the real start of the election campaign will begin. And unlike this somewhat predictable Super Tuesday, the result of the presidential election in November will be much harder to call. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Colorado.
Well, Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri is director at Chatham House US and America's programme, and I asked her about the predictability of Super Tuesday this time around.
When it comes to that top line headline news of who are the candidates going to be for president, it's absolutely predictable. I think, one thing to watch is how enthusiastic are these voters? Do they turn out? And because as we know, when it gets to November, one of the key predictors of who will win is something that's very difficult to anticipate, and that is how many people vote. Now, primary voters tend to be, more passionate, more towards the extremes of the party. So it's a little bit hard to read, but still it tells us something about the enthusiasm or possibly the lack of enthusiasm amongst U.S. voters. But the second thing to watch that I think fewer people here in the United Kingdom are paying attention to are the primaries for seats in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And this is actually where we're going to see some very important races, important results. Those primaries will determine, who runs. The House of Representatives is certainly up for grabs. The Democrats would only need to win 4 seats to take the House back, regardless of who the president is. And, if we've been watching U.S. politics carefully over the last few months, we know that what happens in the House matters a huge amount for things that are significant for the rest of the world, such as whether or not spending bills that go to supporting Ukraine even get taken to a vote. If the Democrats win the House, they control those committees. They have a lot more capacity to influence outcomes. And so these are significant races. They also tell us a little bit about whether the Democrats who are running will be more conservative or more progressive, more moderate, more progressive, where the Republican balance of power will be. So there's a lot happening below that headline news, which actually is significant and will shape the future of U.S. politics.
That's really interesting. And also let's talk about Nikki Haley. Of course, she's trailing far, far, far behind Donald Trump as far as the Republican candidates going. Could we expect, is this the last day you'll expect to see her out on the campaign trail, or what do you think her strategy is likely to be?
Yes, I mean, that is the $100 million question. I suspect, well, it depends very much on how voters cast their ballots, and one doesn't want to preempt that. But it certainly looks like this will be the beginning of the end of this phase of Nikki Haley's name being on the ballot. But I think Nikki Haley is somebody who's got a clear vision. She's looking not only at 2024, she's at 2024, she's looking at 2028. And so her visibility, I think one of the questions for Nikki Haley is how can she remain visible and remain an influence? Remember, she's gaining a lot of wealthy Republican voters. She has a very different set of policies, much more internationalist. And that appeals to a lot of Republicans who have felt alienated from their party since Donald Trump was elected. So she will continue to have an important voice. Unclear, and it seems less likely that that voice will be on the ballot after today.
And that was Dr. Leslie Vinja-Moray from Chatham House.